Inequality of genders, men, women. I mean, we got so many crazy issues in this country, and it's just insane, right? I mean, what's going on? And everybody has a side that they are taking, and that's why preachers don't want to talk about this, and they talk about safe topics. And, and it happens across the range of issues. We talk about safe topics. So I wanted to say a little bit about, before we go into this study, I wanted to talk a little bit about why is it okay that we talk about this issue here. But before I do that, wasn't that music wonderful? Girls, thank you so much. We appreciate you coming here and always singing for us. So nice of you. Thank you. We are safe here at this church. This is my lesson number one. It's safe to talk about difficult issues from the Bible. It's safe to do that because that's lesson number one, Miguel. No. Is there some before that? No. Lesson number one, the one that says lesson number one. Okay, that's okay. We'll get there to that point. It's safe to talk about these issues because, folks, I have always wanted this church to be united in what we do, in the causes that we have, in the cause of Christ. I fully realize that we have a number of differences here in this room. We have in this room conservatives, we have liberals, we have people who are in the middle. We have people obviously from many other countries. We have people who were born here. We have Native Americans. We have people who have all kinds of different opinions, and they interpret the Bible in different ways. We are never going to agree on everything. And all of us will never have the same opinion as another person. There are those of you who feel, there are those people out there, I'm not going to point at you, but there are people out there who feel that the husband is the head of the wife and she's supposed to be obedient and she's supposed to submit. There are those who believe that, and they look at the Bible and they find texts that say that. And then there are those who believe that we live now in the 21st century and we are all equal in Jesus Christ and we all have the same abilities and same potential, and there shouldn't be any inequality, there shouldn't be any discrimination, there shouldn't be anything like that going on in this world. So we have difference of opinions. We have difference of opinions on who's supposed to be in the White House. We have difference of opinions on a wide array of issues. We can't come all along and say we all agree on everything. It's just never going to happen. But we can agree on one thing. We can agree that it's a good thing to go feed the homeless. We can agree that it's a good thing to go preach the gospel to those people who don't know the gospel. We can agree on the fact that it's a good thing to provide help for those who are in poverty, to provide support for those who are trying to get off of drugs and off of bad things that are destroying their life. We can agree on all of those things. So I want us to focus on the cause of Christ, not on one another's political or religious interpretations, because that's all it is. You may have a deeply held belief, I may have a deeply held belief, but you know what? In the end, it's just my interpretation of the Bible, because somebody else can interpret it a little bit differently. And you can be convinced that yours is correct and yours is right. And they will be convinced that their interpretation is correct and right. So what do? Do we fight? And people do, churches do. They fight. They create a congregation after congregation, a sect after sect. Thousands of different religious Christian sects are out there because people disagree on these issues instead of focusing on the gospel and on the cause of Jesus. So I wanted to say that, number one. Number two, I also wanted to say something else about this church and about my ministry here in this church. And I want to make this clear. 20 years I've been preaching here. If you're coming here for me to give you all of the answers, it's not going to happen. Just not going to happen. I don't have all the answers. If you are the kind of a person or somebody out there who is watching this on YouTube or on TV or whatever, on the radio, and you need somebody to always tell you what to do and how it is and which direction to go in, I'm not the person to do that. I'm just not. I don't have all of those answers. You need some strong, dominant personality in your life that's going to guide you through life. I'm not that person. But what I want to do is get you to think on your own about these issues and come up with your own decisions on how you're going to live your life. I feel that that's what my job is, to get you to think. So, before we go any further, I think that's important. And that's why I think it is safe to come to this church and to be in this church, because you will always be allowed to have your opinion. Nobody's going to step on you because I may disagree with you or with somebody. But you know what? You're always welcome here. I love you. I love those who are different. I love you even if you're doing things totally wrong. Why? Because Jesus, that's what he wants us to do. So, let's talk about women in the Bible. Let's talk about women's issues, having said all of that. We start with Genesis 3:16. This is where I start. I want to put this together, obviously my way. Maybe my way is not right, but I just want you to get into my thinking. In Genesis 3:16, you have a situation where a man and a woman, they were created in the Garden of Eden. God created the man first, and then he created the woman. And the conclusion of that creation process was where God made a statement and said that everything was good that he created, and he created the man and the woman in his image. That was the original creation. Adam was given one wife. He was not given 10 wives. He could not sell her. He could not beat her. He could not dominate her. He cannot do anything. He was given one wife, and he was supposed to live with her forever and ever and ever in perfect unity and union. That was the original intent. That's how God made it. So the woman was made in the image of God just as much as man is. And some women will say that women are actually a lot superior than men are. But we are not going to go into that there, But after the fall, you have this curse. You know the story. I don't need to tell you the story. Satan tempted Eve, and Eve told Adam, and Adam sinned, and all of a sudden there is sin in the world, and God comes in and he calls out the snake, and he says, you are, the worst of the worst, and this is going to be your punishment. And he tells man, Adam, what his punishment is going to be, and then he tells woman, Eve, to the woman he said, I will make your pains in childbearing very severe. And all women who have had kids, they have experienced this. With painful labor you will give birth to children. Your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you. This is how it starts. He will rule over you. So for the rest of the Old Testament, for the rest of the Bible, you have very clearly in the Bible this concept that men in general will rule over women and will rule over their wives. This is just a fact. I can go back into the Bible and tell you that in the Bible you have this wonderful case for equality. Because, for example, if you just look at the state of the women in the Old Testament, let's look at it just for a second. And I chose one little passage here that is basically indicative of the rest of the Old Testament in relation to the teachings on women. If a man sells his daughter as a servant, so if you as a man had a right, it was okay to sell your daughter, to sell her into the slavery. Now look at the rest of this. She is not to go free as male servants do. So if a man was a servant, he would be released after 7 years. If a woman was a servant, she was not able to go free. If she does not please the master who has selected her for himself, he must let her be redeemed. He has no right to sell her to foreigners because he has broken faith with her. If he has slept with her and they have kids, it's a whole new mess here. She has no rights. If he selects her for his son, he must grant her the rights of a daughter. What is the right of a daughter? She can be sold. If he marries another woman, he must not deprive the first one of the food, clothing, and marital rights. In other words, he is supposed to continue having a sexual relationship with her. So a man had the right to buy a woman for himself. He had the right to have kids with her. He had the right to choose another wife, if he wanted to, another wife, but he was supposed to take care of his first wife. He must not deprive her of her food, clothing, or marital rights. But if he does not provide her with these three things, she is to go free without any payment of money. So she could be in this relationship for 20 years, right? And he can find a nice, younger, prettier girl, marry her, and he can tell his first wife, I'm not going to feed you anymore, I'm not going to clothe you anymore, and I'm not going to have a relationship with you anymore. And at that point, after 20 years of serving him and doing everything for him, she can go away free without any compensation for what has happened to her. Now, there are people who are idealistic. They have this ideal picture of the Bible. And they always want to find, No, this is how it was throughout the Old Testament. And it's not much better in the New Testament. And it's not much better for the next 2,000 years. This is how it is. This is how it was in the Bible. This explains the role and the status of women in the society. Obviously, somebody can say, but Pastor Gordon, there were women who were judges, and there were women who were leading men, and there were women who were teachers, and there was even women who were prophets. Of course. And these are all individual examples, not the general rule. So in every society, in every system, you have exceptions. So they had exceptions too. This is what's going on in the scriptures. Now, you have to know that this type of teaching, obviously, whether you like it or not, we're talking about factual things, is going to affect how things are in the world to this day. It's going to affect, because you have, obviously, in Christianity, you have preachers who are going to preach this same message, and they're going to say a wife, is here, and a husband is here. That's what they'll say. They'll go even as far as to say, if your husband is physically abusing you, and you run away, you better go back to him. They'll say that. They'll teach that too. You see, so you have that going on in Christianity. So you have a number of issues today, and I just want to go through these quickly, issues that are affecting women and girls in the world today. And let's look at some of those. Access to education, number one. Millions of girls are not allowed to have education. In some of the Muslim countries, in Afghanistan, for example, right now, these ultra-conservative Muslims who also receive their teaching about the women from the Old Testament scriptures, because they all claim that Abraham was their father, you see, they will go into the school and kill the teachers, kill the girls, burn the school down. So you have this across the board, across the world, where huge numbers of female kids, girls, are not allowed to have the education. So they grow up, and what happens to them? They can't read, they can't write, they can't get a job. If they can't have a job, they can't provide for themselves. What is their option? Get married, have kids, or work the streets. So this is one of the results of this idea that women are less than men. Employment opportunities Even in the United States, everybody is going to say 77 cents to $1. I don't even want to go there with that stuff, that women earn less than men. Those of you who are women in this room, you know that you have had a number of issues and problems at work. There is sexual abuse. There is insinuations. There is blackmail. There is all kinds of things that women face in this world. Water and sanitation is another huge problem that women are facing. And when I looked at that one, I wondered, why is that? Why would water and sanitation... And look at this. I just want to read this to you. Girls whose schools lack proper bathrooms will often skip school during their menstrual periods. And that's why I tell you, keep the kids downstairs when you're coming in here, because most of these topics here that we do are for adult audiences. You see, water and sanitation. If the girls don't get good bathrooms, what's going to happen to them? Well, you didn't have to send him out. This was the worst of the worst problem. I try to keep it as kosher as I can, but every once in a while you have to say things that are going on, So you can see how this is a huge issue. Where do we come in as Seventh-day Adventists here? Do we have a role? I want you to think about it. Maternal health. 800 women die every day from preventable pregnancy-related causes. 300,000 die a year. Gender-based violence. 1 in 3 women experience physical or sexual violence in their lifetimes. When that happens, that woman is going to be psychologically damaged for the rest of her life. 1 in 3. This is all over the world. Child marriage. They estimated 140 million women are forced into the child marriage. So what happens when somebody marries an 8-year-old girl or a 12-year-old girl? What happens when she gets pregnant? You have major complications, you have death, you have serious problems that are a result of that. And then gender equality, or the lack of the equality. 95% of the world countries are led by men. Most of the corporations are led by men. And I tell you, as a man, we think about ourselves first, and then we think about everybody else. A man is not going to do a good job thinking about what women need. That's my opinion. Maybe I'm totally wrong. What's happening in the church? These are the issues that are taking place in the world. What about the church? In our church, for example, right now, and I'm going to say this very openly, in our church right now, we are about to split up. The Seventh-day Adventist Church is about to split over the issue of the ordination of the women. Because we have the GC leadership, the top leadership of the church that does not want women to be ordained, and you have local conferences and unions that do, and they are now clashing at this point, and who knows how this is going to end. Absolutely nobody knows how this is going to end. The role of women in the society. Why? Because the Bible says that the woman is down here. Woman should not teach a man. There is a clear text in the New Testament that the woman should come to church and be silent and not teach a man. How do you take that text? Is it a cultural? Did it apply only to them back then, or does it apply to everybody forever? How can a woman teach her kids but not teach a man? How can a woman, Ellen G. White, be a founder of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and everybody in this church bows down to everything that Ellen White has to say, right? We follow it to the letter, and we see her as the highest authority in the church, but no other women are supposed to teach or preach. How does that happen? You see, this is my personal thinking. You may disagree with me on many of these issues, but remember, in this church we are safe to disagree on these issues, but we are also united in the gospel of Christ, in what we are supposed to do for each other. This is what's going on in the church. This is what's going on in the world. When you go to Jesus, for example, in this next story, Matthew 19:3-8, I think there is a little bit of an answer there that kind of gives us a little bit of an idea of where we can go with this. A Pharisee came up to Jesus and tested him, saying, "Is it lawful to divorce one's wife for any cause?" So a guy comes up to Jesus and says, "Is it okay to divorce your wife for any cause?" Why did they ask him that question? A couple of reasons. Number one, they wanted to see if he was going to disagree with the law of Moses. Number two, John the Baptist was recently killed, his head chopped off, because he criticized Herod the Great, who left one wife to marry another. So they wanted to get Jesus in trouble, hoping that Herod the Great was going to come back down on him and kill him as well. So they are testing him. They are trying to cause trouble for Jesus. They are trying to set a trap. Is it lawful to divorce one's wife for any cause? And Jesus answers, "Have you not read that he who created them from the beginning made them male and female, and said, therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let no man separate." So Jesus says no. And he gives a biblical example. He gives a text. He says basically to them, you cannot do whatever you want to do to your wife. Because the deeper question was, can I as a man do whatever I want to do? If I don't like her cooking, I get me another wife. Basically they did that. So this was really the question. And Jesus says, no, you can't. Because God says when a man joins a woman, the two become one, and that's it. You're stuck with each other and you can't just let her go. And they say to him, look at this. Why then did Moses command one to give a certificate of divorce and to send her away? I want you to think about this point now, just for a second. When Moses did this, and when we read in the Bible that the man can sell his daughter, when we read in the Bible that it's okay for a man to have a number of wives, polygamy, when we read in the Bible that if a woman commits an adultery, she's supposed to be stoned, but if a man commits an adultery, he's supposed to bring an offering to the temple. I told you, I want you to think about this. We say this is the Bible. This is the Holy Word. This is how it's supposed to be. This is inspired. And a lot of people, a lot of churches, a lot of Christianity, they're going by this. They're saying this is inspired. This is how it was. You know, obviously in the Mormon church to this day, you have different Mormon sects where it's okay to be polygamous. People will say it's okay. God never said anything bad about it. And you can look at the Bible and say, yep. Abraham and all of the rest of them, David, Solomon, are you kidding me? How many? His wives, the people that he had, women that he had sex with and called them supposedly wives, numbered in thousands. And you can say, well, that's inspired. God is okay with that. Well, Jesus says, no, you can't do that. What God has joined together, let not the man separate. And when they says, well, Moses says we can do this, Jesus says because of your hardness of heart, Moses allowed you to divorce your wives. But from the beginning it was not so. I want to make a case to you, and I want to propose, and you can reject it or accept it. I want to propose to you that God allowed them to do a lot of crazy things that they wanted to do in the Old Testament that we don't do anymore today. Just because it was okay to have slaves in the Old Testament, we don't do that anymore. Just because it was okay to stone your child because they cussed at you, or to kill somebody who desecrated the Sabbath day, we don't do that anymore. We don't kill people because they break any one of the commandments. If they murder somebody, the government is going to go after them and they'll probably pay the big price. But we don't do things necessarily just because they were done back then. If you go down through the Old Testament, you're going to find out a list of hundreds of items that we just don't do anymore. They were cultural. They had to do with their time. They had to do with their age. Paul, same thing, when he says that the woman should be quiet, obviously at that time it was not even imaginable that the woman would stand up and preach or teach or talk about it, about anything in the church. I have guys who still tell me, friends of mine, who say to me, I wouldn't go to a church where there is a woman pastor. I said, why not? Well, because I don't want her being over me. And I'm like, pastors are supposed to serve. They're not supposed to be over anybody. You see what I'm saying? I mean, and by the way, I'm not here doing this because I want to make a case for the ordination of women or because I want to, I'm telling you, we cannot change any of this. I can have my opinion on these things. I can feel that women are a second-class citizen in this world. I can feel that women should be able to make more money. I can feel that women should be pastors and be ordained. I can feel all of those things. How many of these things can I change? Why should I waste my time on changing those things when I need to focus on something else, which I believe, and I'm going to share that with you here in a second. We can all become political activists. We can all split the church along these lines of, for ordination or against ordination. Or we can focus on something else. Jesus, God, in the Bible, allowed them to do all kinds of things because they were hard of heart. It was their culture. That's how they always did it. You cannot put the woman preacher today in many countries around the world because you would have a riot. Just not done. And I don't think that they should be forced to do that either. I think we should think about the culture and respect it. This is what I want you to hear out of all of this stuff that I'm talking about. Jesus, I love the song about Jesus. Jesus came to seek and to save the lost. Jesus restores. Jesus restores. I am not in the business of changing the world so that the world will live and act according to my personal interpretation of the Bible, but I am here for you and I to change one life at a time, to help one abused person at a time, to help people get education, to help people get a roof over their head, to help a single mother put some food on her table. I can't make things right at the workplace for a woman who is being abused, but I, as a pastor and as a man and as a church, we can love a person like that. We can help a person like that. And that goes a long ways. When you look at this next picture, I have put two pictures. There is a place, I think this was in Baltimore, and there is a place over there in a certain section of town, and you can find this in Denver, you can find this in Chicago or anywhere else, where all of these people live who use drugs, heroin addicts. Many women are living in that area, suffering with addiction, suffering because they were abused. Maybe they ran away from their home when they were teenagers, like so many do. That's what we need to focus on. Because Jesus restores and Jesus redeems. Lesson number 4. Jesus redeems. One of the Pharisees, you need to pay attention to this story. One of the Pharisees asked him to eat with him. And he went into the Pharisee's house and reclined at the table. And behold, a woman of the city who was a sinner. You know what she was, right? She's a prostitute. She learned that he was reclining at the table in the Pharisee's home. She brought an alabaster flask of ointment, supposedly expensive, and standing behind him at his feet, weeping, she began to wet his feet, her tears, and wiped them with the hair of her head, and kissed his feet, and anointed them with the ointment. Now when the Pharisee who had invited him saw this, he said to himself, if this man really was a prophet, he would know who this woman is, and what this woman is, and how dirty she is, and how filthy she is, and how sinful she is. Why is he allowing her to touch him? They already had a negative opinion of women. But now this is even worse because this woman is a prostitute. And Jesus didn't hear him speak because he was just thinking this guy in his head. But Jesus answers him and he says, Simon, I have something to say to you. And he says, go ahead, Jesus. And Jesus says this story. A certain moneylender had two debtors. One owed 500 denarii, the other 50. When they could not pay, he canceled the debt of the both. Which one of them is going to love the master more? And Simon obviously says, the one, I suppose, for whom he canceled the larger debt. And he said to him, you have judged rightly. And then what Jesus did here, he got Simon to judge himself. He judged himself, basically. And then Jesus turned to him. Imagine if you were the recipient of these words that you are about to hear now. Imagine if these words were directed at you. Do you see this woman? I entered your house. You gave me no water for my feet. But she has wet my feet with her tears, wiped them with her hair. You gave me no kiss. But from the time I came in, she has not ceased to kiss my feet. You did not anoint my head with oil, but she has anointed my feet with ointment. This woman, the lowest of the low, the society considered her the lowest of the low. Nobody was lower than her. And he, the Simon the Pharisee, he was the highest of the high. He was rich. He was religious. He was righteous. He knew the law. He never broke the law. He always behaved right. How do you relate to Jesus? Huh? How do you? A lot of times we relate to Jesus like this Simon guy. We are mighty. We know the rules. And we know the Bible. And we know the message. And we are the chosen and we are the remnant. When was the last time? When was the last time we washed a feet of a drug addict? We love to come here on a communion and wash each other's feet, and we all make sure that our bodies are showered nicely and clean and our feet don't smell bad, right? We all do that. And then we're comfortable with each other. I can take my shoes off, you can wash my feet, they're nice and clean. But if I forget to clean them, oh man, then I'm embarrassed. Then I got to pick somebody that that I know is not going to be offended. I can call Jim and I can say, hey, Jim, we've been friends for 20 years. And I can say, hey, you can wash my feet. They're not so clean today, right? And I have a few other friends here in the church who I would be comfortable with washing my feet when they are dirty. But how many times we go down there and we feed those homeless people? When was the last time you anointed somebody's feet with oil? When was the last time we loved much? See, this is the point. It wasn't the anointing. It wasn't the washing of feet. It wasn't the sacrifice of this expensive perfume. It was the fact that she loved Jesus much. That's what she did. She loved him so much. How much do we love people? Jesus says, when you do it to one of these little ones, you do it to me. How much do we love people? And I'm telling you here, we cannot change this world. I can't change the rules, ladies. I'm sorry. I can't change your situation if you are in an abusive situation, if you are, taken advantage of at work. I can't change the way the society is, but we all can love each other. What about this next picture that Miguel is going to show you? It's a picture of a woman who is shooting heroin in her body. Can we love her? Would she be welcome here? Would we put up with her? What if we got her some money and clean clothes in an apartment? And 2 months later, she went back to her drugs. And we did it again. And then, she failed again. How long would we put up with her? How long? What the world needs is not people who are going to pass these laws, legislate the equality, but people who are going to make a difference in people's lives. Individual people, individual churches. You and I you can pass all the rules and regulations you want, but until people know Jesus and accept him and his way of life, nothing is going to change in this world. Our primary goal ought to be preaching the gospel. Jesus says in 2 Corinthians 5:17, Paul says, therefore, if anyone is Christ, he's a new creation. All of these women around the world that are getting abused, life is not fair, I'm sorry. But if we bring Jesus to them, they become new creation. If I bring Jesus into my heart, I become a new creation. God takes away my anger, my chauvinism. We all have it. All men have a little bit of that. Let's be honest about it. We all have a little bit of a sense of superiority to each other. We do that. Men, women, everybody. But when Jesus comes in, he takes that away. Why? Because the old has passed away. Behold, the new has come in. They do online. You have this. You can do this yourself. You can go online, and you can look at people, not just women, but people who were arrested in 2003, and then arrested again in 2005, and you can see the difference. The difference that the addiction has brought into their life, the difference that abuse and poverty and neglect and lack of love and lack of family has brought into their life, the sin that Satan is so much promoting in this world, trying to keep people down, trying to put people into the gutter, destroys people all around us. And maybe in this sanctuary here, we don't look like this. We look nicer, Our face is not all messed up because we got hooked on meth. But maybe in here, your heart looks like that, and mine. Because somebody sometimes in the past has done us hurt, has done us bad. Maybe it was your mother or your father that has caused deep pain in your life. Maybe on the outside you look okay, but on the inside you're a mess. Maybe when you were a kid, somebody abused you. This is not just about women today. This is about restoration. This is about redemption. This is about the power of Jesus. This is about what He can do through us in our sphere of influence. Now, before the faith came, we were held captive under the law, imprisoned until the coming faith would be revealed. So then the law was our guardian until Christ came, in order that we might be justified by faith. What does that mean, justified by faith? You know, I don't know if I can explain to you the deep theology of that, but I know one thing. It means that Jesus accepts me simply because I believe. It means that He wants to heal the hurts that's in my heart. It means that He wants me to move forward with my life and leave what hurt me behind me. But now that faith has come, we are no longer under our guardian. For in Christ Jesus, you're all sons of God through faith. For as many of you as were baptized into Christ have put on Christ. There is neither Jew nor Greek. There is neither slave nor free. We talked about slaves in the Old Testament, didn't we? There is no male and female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. We may have difference of opinions. Whether you believe that a man is the head of the household or a woman should be equal with a man absolutely has zero bearing on whether or not you're going to be saved. And I don't care how you believe. It doesn't bother me one way or the other. If you believe one way or if you believe the other, I accept you just the same. And I love you just the same. And God loves us just the same. We can't think all alike because we are not the computer program. Everybody's different. We just have to accept that. We have people in this church who are totally different than you and I are. And they think differently, and they had different experiences, and they had different beatings than you did when you were a kid. I got beatings with a little stick, that my mother would pluck off of an apple tree, and then I would get good beating on my legs. There are other people who got beat up with electric wire. Their experience is different than mine. You know what I'm saying? We are all different. We can't think different. We can't accept everything on the same level. We don't process things in the same way. But we are all the same when we come to Jesus. Men, women, slaves, free, in bondage, Muslim, Christian, gospel of Jesus, the power of Jesus, the power of the Holy Spirit has something in it that can change me. And that's what we ought to be focusing on. Helping people to change by introducing them to the power of Jesus Christ. We are to redeem. I believe that as a church, I don't have a political agenda here. I believe that, lesson number 6, we are to redeem. We are to restore people. We are to accept people. We are to improve people's lives. That's, as a church, what we should do. Regardless of our political or religious background, or ethnic or nationality or whatever else you want to think about. That's what our job is. To make a difference in this world for the gospel of Christ. Well, you're going to say, Pastor Gordon, how are you going to do that? I found this picture to be very disturbing. When I looked at that picture, I found it very disturbing. This is a picture to me where I see not just one human being going through a process of destruction and fear and just loss at a loss. I look at that picture and she's like, what's happening to me? Where am I going? What's going to happen to me? I see this, a state of humanity in this picture. And here you see it clearly. The rest of us, we hide it. I have a nice shirt. I put the nice smile on. How are you doing, Pastor Gordon? I'm doing great. How are you doing? This is what we do all day long. How are you doing? I'm doing great. We put on Facebook things that are so great about our life. The latest restaurants where we went and vacations and all of that stuff. I don't need to go down the list of all of that stuff. We present the one picture and another picture is the real picture that's going on in our life. So what do we do as a church? Where do we go? Where do we make a difference? Young people, they're always about making a difference. How do we make a difference? There are women's shelters right here in Arvada. You're not going to find them in phone book. You're not going to find them online. Do you know why? Does anybody know why? Kim, you know why?
Yes, I do know why.
Because they're scared that a husband or a partner or somebody will find out where the woman is being sheltered and that they will come in and cause chaos. So there are shelters all over this city that are not on the books. There is no sign on the front door. There are people in there who have been abused. You ever go to a shelter for animals and you see the abused dog and you see the abused cat and they're hiding in the corner of their cage and they don't want to look at you and they're just scared of people? There are actually people like that in this world. Not just women, men too, children too. There is one shelter in our area where Jasmina took food to them from our food bank on a regular basis. Because who supports these shelters? They don't get necessarily a lot of government funding. Some of them don't get any. Can we do something about it as a church? Single mothers in poverty, millions of them all over the country. Survivors of sex trafficking. Gave you a website here on the sex trafficking. Millions of people, 300,000 kids in the United States are prostituted by their parents. 300,000 girls and boys. And around the world, that number is more like 2 million. We want equality. Equality comes only when Jesus comes into my heart and your heart. That's when equality comes. That's when we start treating each other right. There is a website there for this. There are other projects that we can do here in this city. I put on this project, Gloria. Barbara, where is Barbara? Barbara is outside, greeting. Not that Barbara. That's Barbara Sanchez. Whoa, wow, nice. I'm glad you're here. We have other Barbara. She's in a wheelchair and she's greeting all the time. She has a sister. Her sister's name is Gloria. Gloria just had a surgery, and Gloria just went home to her trailer. She lives in Oklahoma. She's a member of this church. She moved from here to Oklahoma, and she lives in this trailer that does not have any kind of insulation. So this winter, if she wants to stay warm, her heat bill is going to go through the roof. She may not even be able to stay warm. And Lee, Harold's brother, says to Barbara, maybe we ought to go down there and do something for her. And then they mentioned it to me. And I says, well, maybe we should. Maybe we should put together a little fund. to put a little warmth around Gloria's trailer where she lives. People like that right here in our neighborhood. I want to tell you one last thing here. Lesson 7. And this is directed at all of us, but especially at the younger generation people. It takes time. It takes time to make a difference in this world. And I say this in the context of instant gratification society that we are all living in right now. We all want to get pizza for lunch? We can have it here in half an hour. Somebody gets on the phone, order it, it will be here maybe in 15 minutes. You all want to see a movie on this screen? You want to see a football game? You want to see a soccer game from the World Cup? I can get one of the young people, they can hook us up. We can be watching any movie that you want to see here in the next 5 minutes. That's what's going on in this world. You don't like my outfit? You think I should wear a jacket? You can go on Amazon and buy me one right now. And by tomorrow morning, it will be in my house. That's the society that we are living in, folks. And we think that everything happens fast. It doesn't. Changing one life at a time takes a long time. Takes a lot of love. I know a guy who comes to this church every 3 or 4 months. And we pray and he does good. And then he goes back out on the street and he's drinking again. And comes again and over again. And this has been going on now for several years. At which point am I going to give up on him? Never. Never. Changing lives, preaching the gospel, making a difference in the community, making a difference in the lives of those who are poor and who can't afford the basic heating bill, whether men or women, takes time, takes resources. It doesn't happen overnight. I've been in this church for 20 years. And if I was here for another 200 years, I wouldn't finish the work that needs to be done. So I want you to know that we need to be prepared for a long haul. We need to have a commitment that's going to last for a while. We can come up with projects. I gave you my phone here at the end of this outline. There is my phone. And I says, if you want to help or be involved, text me. I also want to say, you know what? If you have an idea where we can make a difference for the purposes of this sermon in the lives of women, then let me know. In the lives of teenagers who have run away from home, girls whose fathers were abusing them sexually, run away from home. Where do they live? Where are they going to sleep? It's October, November coming, December coming. We're all going to be warm. We're all going to be nice. Talking about women and talking about equality and talking about GC and talking about ordination, it's all nonsense. It's a waste of time if somebody is out there hungry and cold. We can go around in circles on all of these issues. Do women get 77 cents or 79 cents? Or is that even true? Or, we can just spend all kinds of energy and time and brain power on all of these issues. What does it matter? If somebody is suffering, what does it matter? We have a fund in this church. It's called a disaster fund. You can donate to that. If you want to donate to women who are abused, you can put on your envelope and say, for women causes. Jim will make another fund for that. If you have an idea and you think you want to go and help with Gloria's trailer, maybe several of us can go. Or maybe we can just raise a little bit of money and help her out. this winter. Maybe that's what we can do. And in this room, there is a lot of ideas. And there is a lot of need. And between all of our brains, we can put together a church that does things for people. And not just talk and talk and talk and discusses issues. So, am I right when I say that we are a safe church? We can talk about these issues? We can talk about these issues. We can talk about gay marriage. We can talk about the ordination of women. We can talk about whether or not our church is on the right track as a seven-day average church. We can talk about any issue. And it's okay to have a different opinion than me. It's okay to have a different opinion than the leaders in the church. As long as we focus on the gospel of Christ. And as long as we focus on the cause of Jesus Christ. And that's why I think we can be an exceptional and a different church than any other. So the question for you is today, not just whether or not you want to get yourself involved in one of these projects. The question, that's not a question. The question is not if Pastor Gordon said everything that you agree with or not, or if I agree with your views or not. The question is, can we put aside our differences, which we inevitably will have? We will have differences. We will. Of opinion, of understanding of the Scripture. I may say, hey, this is cultural, and you may say, no, Pastor Gordon, that's Bible. That's inspired. Can we put that aside and say, yeah, I respect your opinion. It's a little different than mine. But let's join together for a cause to make lives better for women, for kids, for men. Many men who are abused too. That's a whole other topic. What about elderly people? What about elderly people? You know how many elderly people are abused by their own children? This is what our cause is, folks. Gospel of Jesus. We are all equal in the eyes of God. And our job is to preach that gospel, and our job is to find. Jesus says, go into the alleys and streets and behind the buildings that have been torn down. You go to Chicago, and there is a side of the city that looks like a bomb exploded there, like World War I just took place. And people lived there. And in Denver too, and Jesus says, go to those places and make a difference. And even amongst our own selves here. Even here, in this room, since we are talking about women, there are wives who were abused by their husbands. I know, because some of those women, they talk to me. Years ago, we had a lady here when I came first to this church. I mention this story every once in a while, and she was just a wonderful, wonderful person. I loved her very much. But I go to her house. She lived just a little bit away from here, and some of you know who I'm talking about. But this was years ago. She passed away a long time ago. But I go in, and when we were getting all introduced, obviously I ask about her family and her kids and her husband. And one time I was sitting at her desk at her kitchen table, and she told me how her husband passed away and all of that stuff. And then she turned to me and she says, best thing ever happened to me, Pastor Gordon. I'm serious. It's a funny story. It's a funny story, right? It's funny to us. Wasn't funny to her all those years when she had to put up with his abuse. It wasn't funny. What do you know in this room here? What do you see when you look at another person's eyes? What do you see? Do you take a moment? Do you take a moment just to see what's in there? And I know for a fact there are some people in this church who have this ability. Several of them that I'm aware of. Maybe there is more. But I'm aware of several people in this church who have this ability. Not disability, but this ability. They're able to. I was screwing that up, right? They're able to look at another person and recognize a need. And even a lot of times, even without me even knowing, they don't even tell me, but they go and they take care of the problems. We have people like that in this church who can do that on their own. I don't have to prod them. I don't have to say, hey, they just do that on their own. And I want to encourage everyone here. Be like that. Not just in this church, but everywhere you go. Don't just say, hey, how you doing? Look at a person's eyes. And when you ask them, how you doing? Make sure you mean it. How you doing? How are you doing? What's going on in your life? This is what I do. I'll say to a person, how are you doing? And they'll say, I'm doing okay. Then I'll say, what's going on in your life? And then they'll say they'll divulge a little more. And then I'll say, and this is over a period of minutes. And then I'll say, are you okay? And by the time I ask that third question, how are you doing? What's going on in your life? Are you okay? By then I get maybe a better answer of what's going on in their life. Because by then, after I ask 3 times, remember how many times Jesus asked Peter? 3 times. After I ask 3 times, at that point, maybe they will be convinced that you really care. And maybe at that point they will feel comfortable enough to divulge a little bit, a little secret from their heart. And that's how you make friends. And that's how you help people heal. And that takes time. Years. It doesn't happen by making a phone call. It doesn't happen with an app. It happens week after week after week after week. So, that was my sermon on the inequality of genders. It's probably the worst sermon you ever heard on this topic. And there are probably many theologians out there who can explain all of these verses a lot better than you can. But I just wanted us to think a little bit together on this topic. And maybe we will do something as a result of this. Remember, my number is on the bottom. Text me. God bless you.